So how should I be then, honey?
Ask your damn questions.
All right.
And don't you put that on there.
Yes, dear. The last time we talked, we mentioned a crisis situation with one of the potential patients that we were looking to get services. Can you provide us an update on that situation and where we are today?
Yes. So for that one, that was the paramedic that was referred to us by another group home. She was not on the waiver and hadn't received any services or support for the last 10 years. So I called the APD to do some digging. We were able to identify who her pre-enrollment coordinator was. And then that person connected us to the waiver support coordinator assigned to the case. And after about 4 months of calling and emailing everybody and their supervisors weekly, we were able to get him approved for the waiver, and they are now moving forward with a crisis placement, which is like an emergency placement that can take place within 45 days.
Awesome. And what in this parent's life dignified the crisis?
I feel like that's her business. However, in general, for crisis placement, it has to be that you can no longer provide care for the individual, whether it's financial or time or your health or what have you. You are now in a situation where you can't provide care for that individual, and you are dependent now on support or help from the government.
And so now that they've gotten approval to be on the waiver, what's the timeline for potentially being able to receive services?
So they said the turnaround is 45 days for a crisis placement. Timelines are sometimes kept in this industry, a lot of times not. So we'll see. But the goal is to have everything resolved and sorted out for the family by April. Hard deadline of April.
Okay, awesome. There was also the additional patient from the respite care. Can we talk about what's happened, where we are today with that?
We're nowhere. We're still trying to get approval for respite. And we're getting a little bit of the runaround. We've gotten approval to do private duty nursing, which is us sending a nurse to the individual's home and providing services there. And then I saw there was an approval for personal supports, which I don't know what it is. But respite, as we know it to be, has a nursing option for respite, which is what he needs. Wherever he goes, he needs to be able to get nursing care. But then they're saying that we can't use respite because respite is specifically for people under 18, and instead they will use personal supports as respite, but there is no personal supports with nursing. And so we haven't figured that out. They're fighting us. I mean, respite literally means to place the kids somewhere for a number of hours, day, week, what have you, or temporary care while the parent is unable to do so. But they can't seem to figure out how to achieve that. I think the person coordinating this just has in her head, oh, he has private duty nursing, just go to his house. And we if we could do that every day, we would, but we can't. So we need a combination of things. And they don't seem to be able to get past that and look at the whole need of the family and just run the codes for what they actually need. So we're nowhere on respite as of yet.
Okay, that's unfortunate because I understand the mother has gone through some health circumstances of her own, and the waiver support coordinator has been very engaged in trying to provide her with the help and the relief that she needs. And this sounds like an administrative hang-up that's really driving a wedge between solving that problem.
A little bit. So what I or the waiver support coordinator will have to do is go through the iBudget waiver handbook, which is this thick, to go read the definitions of the different services and then pull it out and say, hey, word for word, this is what this says. this is what we're trying to do. This is allowed. Please approve this code. Or at least let her submit the request to try to get the funding for it. So certain things always take like a couple weeks, couple months, and calling a lot of different people to finally get to the one that will get the thing done. And this seems to be one of those.
Yeah, try, and try again, right? Okay. In relation to the ResHab situation that we learned, we were not eligible to receive, or excuse me, we were not receiving that funding. Can you provide some more updates on just what happened, what is happening, and what we can potentially do in the future to maybe recapture some of those lost funds from that 5-6 month period?
Okay. So our first patient, we should have been receiving ResHab for them the whole time, and we were not. So in order to do so, we'd have to submit what they call a SANS request. I do not know what that acronym means. Google it. To reassess his funding and to get approval for ResHab, because when he came to us, he didn't have it. That's not to say he was never approved for it before. It's just the previous home he was in, they didn't do that. So it wasn't attached to him when he came here. They also didn't have us in the system as a provider for ResHab. So we had to get our thing fixed in the system. And now we have to submit that SANS request to request the additional funding for the individual to get residential habilitation. And it's been 6 months, and they say that there's no way to back pay it, and the only exception is if it was an administrative issue. But it appears to be an administrative issue on both sides. Like, they never put us in the system. We did everything we were supposed to do. They didn't do their part of it. And the same, the waiver support coordinator should have submitted for ResHab for her patient, and that didn't happen. So there is a chance, maybe, I'm not hopeful, but they might give us back pay. But I'll go through the motions, I'll call the people, I'll do the follow-up to see if we can get that. But for the SANS, we have to basically build a case as to why the funding is needed. So we had to provide all of his quarterly reports. We had to provide his nursing notes showing what we were doing every day. I had to write a letter saying why residential habilitation was necessary. The doctor had to write a letter of medical necessity, all of his prescriptions. Basically, they will review everything. So even though he has nursing already and we're just asking for ResHab, they're like, well, if you want us to look at something, we got to look at everything again. So the risk in this is there could be changes to his nursing in order to try to get this ResHab. So we have to be very careful and make sure that all of our paperwork is in order so that we don't compromise the resources that he already has, trying to get him additional resources. So that's not done yet. They are waiting on me to submit the nursing notes and the letter for medical necessity.
In relation to the many issues that you just described, we were recently at a regional meeting for APD and got to have some FaceTime with some of the administrators that we've been emailing, calling, and put faces to names. Can you talk about that experience of being able to ask those questions, have that in-person time, and build those relationships and communicate the process that has been this business so far?
Yeah. So anytime you get an opportunity to meet somebody in person, take it, because they do not answer the phone. And you're lucky if they respond to an email. So the quarterly provider meetings are a good opportunity to meet other providers, to meet waiver support coordinators, and to meet the staff at APD. So by this meeting, this was my first one. So by the time I got there, I would say, hi, I'm Antoinette, and then say the name of the house. And they'd be like, oh, because they know I've been emailing their ass and calling them every week. So they all knew who I was. They hadn't met me, but but they were at least aware of our company name or our home's name. So that was good. That means I've been doing my job at just making sure people know who we are and where we are, and staying on them. We weren't able to meet a lot of waiver support coordinators, which we took flyers to be able to pass out, but you don't know who's who in the room, and you're there for the meeting. They're providing you with information, so it's not like you get time to network. So that's the hard part. But, this meeting, my goal was to meet the APD people and to follow up on some things that I had that were currently pending in email. So that was helpful.
Awesome. And there was another administrative matter that I believe we got a question answered when it came to patients not in the APD system and being able to petition for opening up bed space from APD. Can you clarify that?
So when we first started this, someone told us that we could, have non-APD patients in the home, but we couldn't really figure out how that was supposed to work. So finally, at this meeting, we were able to get some clarity on that. And technically, you can have a patient that is not an APD client in your home. However, they still have to be one of the 6 disabilities that APD services in order to get the exception for them to be here. But the question is, how do you get paid for that, right? So we still haven't figured that part out. Is that why people have a home health agency, so that they can bill directly to insurance to get paid from those types of individuals, or is it private pay? So there's still a bunch of gaps around that. Yeah.